conquered by Vikings, painted by Impressionists, liberated by the Allies, and celebrated by tourists. Normandy's sweeping coastline has witnessed centuries of tumult and change. Inland, the gentle pace of life continues as it has for centuries. Farmers harvest apples, raise horses, and produce Normandy's famous soft cheeses. And all around are the vestiges of Normandy's great culture, the magnificent Benedictine abbeys, the soaring cathedrals, and the massive Norman castles. Exploring Normandy is like stepping into an Impressionist painting. From the coast to the farmland, from Rouen great cathedral to Mont Saint-Michel, the scenery is enchanting. Normandy's best toured by car. On easy drives, you can savor the culture, the history, the cheese and cider, and the landscape that inspired a new way of painting. We begin in Rouen, then make side trips to medieval abbeys and to Giverny. From our base in Honfleur, we explore the countryside and D-Day beaches. Finally, we take a day trip south to Mont Saint-Michel. Rouen fell to the Vikings in the 9th century. Joan of Arc was tried and executed here. During World War II, the Germans burned the city, and then the Allies bombed it. Strolling through the restored medieval old town, you can hardly imagine such strife. The pretty houses, dramatic churches, and the youthful street scene make Rouen one of the most enjoyable cities in France. Rouen main street, the Rue de Gros Horloge, bustles today as it did centuries ago with merchants, artisans, and tourists. The medieval Gros Horloge, or Big Clock, for which the street is named, is an elaborate mechanism with one hand that points to the hour and a Roman god representing the day of the week. Peeking out at the end of this lively street is the craggy Gothic cathedral Notre Dame. One of the finest Gothic cathedrals in France, Rouen's cathedral is all pinnacles and lace. The church culminates in two very different towers, the left-hand tower from the 12th century and the right from the 17th century. In the simple, lofty interior, slender columns support 4 stories of stone. Carvings adorn the walls, and stained glass filters in the light. A celebrated 13th century window tells the story of Saint Julian, who fulfilled an Oedipal-like prophecy to kill his parents. If you pause for a moment outside the west portal of the Rouen Cathedral, the stone might dissolve into mist. At least that's what it did for the Impressionist Claude Monet, whose works are on display at Rouen's Musée des Beaux-Arts. Impressionism took root here in Normandy. Monet was raised in the seaport Le Havre, and he was introduced to nature and outdoor painting by local artist Eugene Boudin. The works of his compatriots, and for a time fellow Impressionists, Renoir, Sisley, and Degas, are also on display here. Paintings by earlier masters contrast with the Impressionists' dreamy moods and their misty atmospheres. For decades, the Impressionists were scoffed at. The term Impressionist itself was a derogatory phrase coined by a critic in 1874, who found the works unfinished, crude, and amateurish. The picturesque streets east of the museum hold more artistic treasures, and these you can take home. In fact, I'm in search of an antique armoire from Normandy for my place. In Rouen, Half the pleasure is the search for antiques down these streets with their 15th to 18th century timbered houses. On the Rue Saint-Romain, I discovered Max Tetlin Antiques.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, madame.
Voici un joli buffet cauchois,
Oui, oui.
double crosse.
This is from Normandy.
Yes, north of Normandy, beginning of 19th century.
And what kind of wood is this?
It's oak.
To learn more about French antiques, I invited Jean-Jacques Nivolet from FrenchAntiqueDealers.com to stop by. Are there bargains to be had here for visitors?
No, obviously, it's going to be cheaper to buy French antique in France than to buy it in America.
Even when you include the cost of
Yes,
shipping?
well, obviously, because when you buy for yourself. So you pick up a good bargain and then you ship it over to America. But if you buy it in America, well, you buy it from a dealer and then there must be a profit on it.
How do I get something huge like an armoire back home?
All the French dealers are used to ship over either to England or to America or even to Australia, so there's just not a problem.
A beautiful drive west of Rouen is known as the Abbey Route for the Benedictine abbeys it passes. We're stopping at the Abbey of Saint Martin de Boucherville, which remains in virtually the same condition as when it was built in 1125. In the 6th century, Saint Benedict wrote the Benedictine Rule that laid out a well-rounded routine of prayer, manual labor, and study for monks. Over the next 6 centuries, Benedictine monasteries flourished all over northern Europe. The pearl white abbey church, with its simple gray stained glass windows, is a Romanesque jewel. The arch symbolizes the sky, the columns the earth. Romanesque is a meeting of sky and earth, divinity and man. An easy day trip from either Rouen or Paris are the famed Monet Gardens and his house in Giverny. Monet came to live here in 1883, his career just poised on the brink of fame. It had been a long, hard struggle with rejection, abject poverty, and personal tragedies. Monet came to view his grounds at Giverny as an unending source of subjects for his art. He hired gardeners to keep different parts of the garden in bloom throughout the year. Monet dammed a nearby stream to create his water lily pond. He painted more than 250 versions of the pond, obsessed with portraying the scene in different light and atmosphere. Monet strove to record the world as impressions of the eye, divorced from all he knew about the subject. Forget what you see before you, he said. A tree, a house, a field, and simply think, here's a small blue square, there a yellow streak, and paint what appears before you. The quaint Normandy coast and seaports were some of Monet's first subjects as a landscape painter. The seaport town of Honfleur makes a lovely base for exploring the inland farm country, the historic D-Day beaches, and the Norman Bayou tapestry. Fishermen and explorers have set sail from this picturesque harbor for centuries. Samuel Champlain left Honfleur in 1608 and founded Quebec. Honfleur is a popular destination for Parisian weekenders who come for the fabulous fresh seafood in the picturesque streets. Each morning, fresh fish is unloaded at the dock. Chefs from restaurants along the old harbor arrive early to pick up the daily catch. Strolling along the two town quays is a favorite pastime here. The old town streets, with their shingled houses, are fresh with the scent of the sea. Seafood and strolling aside, Honfleur's claim to fame is the artwork this little port inspired. The painter Eugene Boudin was born in Honfleur. In the Boudin Museum, you can admire his landscape paintings, as well as a few by his protege, Monet. Boudin introduced Monet to painting out of doors, something that back then was entirely novel. At the time, nature was not considered a suitable subject for art. Boudin said of landscape painting, "Everything painted on the spot has a strength, a power, a vividness that can't be recaptured in the studio." Fellow artist Degas paid homage to the immediacy of Boudin's work by turning up his collar in front of a painting of a storm. Venture inland from the coast, and gentle farmland and timbered mansions will greet you. This is the rural heart of Normandy. Normandy is known for its hard cider and soft cheese. In the Pays d'Auge, the tourist office has developed well-signed cider and cheese routes. You can stop at local producers and then stroll through strikingly beautiful villages. A rental car is invaluable to really explore the Normandy countryside. For the best deals, I search the internet for rental car companies and comparison shop. And I always book before I leave home. Lush pastures, small towns, and sprawling farms. The blissful Pays d'Auge is especially evocative in autumn, during the apple harvest. Apples and Normandy go hand in hand. Hard cider and apple brandy called Calvados have been made here since the 1500s. At the Manoir d'Apreval, you can witness the centuries-old brandy-making process and taste the high-quality Calvados and ciders. Agathe Letellier told me about the estate.
We are here in this property for 100 years. Now we are 4 generations on this property. My grandmother, my mother, us, and our children.
What is the difference between apple cider or hard apple cider and Calvados?
Apple cider is only a juice, fermented juice. And Calvados is a fermented juice that we distill. We use a distillery machine to boil this fermented juice, and we use only the alcohol of the cider.
So Calvados is a liqueur.
Calvados is more brandy.
More a brandy.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's not appley sweet. I think a lot of people might think it's like apple, like sugary apple drink. It's not.
It's belong to the family of the digestive, like cognac or Armagnac, but with the age it's smoother, but it's not sweet. So we drink it mainly after dinner, after a good meal.
The small towns along the cider and cheese routes are some of the most charming in France. Some 200 residents populate the exquisite little town called Bouvron-en-Auge. 40 half-timbered houses line the streets. Once a strategic town near the coast, inhabited by the invading Vikings, Bouvron's invaders today are mainly tourists who come to marvel at its beauty. All over France, you can discover world-class restaurants tucked away in small towns or in the countryside. At the Michelin-celebrated Pavé d'Auge in Bouvron, I'm in for a treat. Chef Jérôme Bansard whips up a simple Norman dish: chicken cooked with apples, apple cider, and fresh cream.
Poulet Vallée d'Auge.
Chicken from the region with apple, cider, and cream sauce. Thank you, Chef. I can't wait to taste it. My tour of the Pays d'Auge continues. I'm in search of some delicious strong cheese to go with my cider. As with cider producers, some Camembert cheese factories are open for visits. At the Gillot factory in the small town of Briouze, I was introduced to the traditional Camembert process. Fresh milk from Norman cows is poured into large basins and curdled. The curds are then painstakingly ladled into molds. After a day, the cheese is salted and dusted with a fungus, then shelved for about 12 days. Legend has it that a priest hiding out in the country during the French Revolution gave a local woman, Marie Havel, the secret of making Camembert. In truth, the region had long been known for its cheese. Camembert is a creamy cheese, similar to, but somewhat stronger than Brie. Camembert? You can stop by the factory and purchase some directly from the source, but because it's not pasteurized, it may not be allowed back in the U.S. By the way, the local sport here in the countryside is Camembert tossing. The current record is 40 meters. We'll have to wait the official measurement, but it looks pretty darn good to me. A tour of Normandy is likely to include a ruined castle or two, remnants of the Norman past. The Vikings who invaded this part of France wreaked so much havoc that in 911, the King of France struck a bargain with them and handed over part of France. The Norsemen settled down, intermarried, and became known as Normans. From here they set out to conquer England, southern Italy, and Sicily. An embroidered strip of linen called the Bayeux Tapestry captures the most audacious of the Norman conquests, William the Conqueror's invasion of England in 1066. The 230-foot tapestry tells the story of William's claim to the English throne. He was the cousin of King Edward. The king sends his favorite Harold to Normandy to meet with William. In France, Harold, who is recognizable by his devilish little mustache, swears on holy relics that the throne of England will belong to William. But when King Edward dies, Harold breaks his promise and takes the throne himself. The tapestry depicts the comet, later known as Halley's Comet, as an ill omen connected with Harold's betrayal. The Normans prepare for war, sailed to England, and begin their conquest. In the Battle of Hastings, Harold is killed with an arrow to the head, and William becomes King of England. The tapestry is embellished with lively scenes of everyday medieval life, quite unusual for 11th century art. On June 6, 1944, another invasion on these sands altered the course of history. World War II's D-Day. The long Normandy beaches provided the Allies with a perfect opportunity to invade continental Europe and take the occupying Germans by surprise. Nothing about Omaha Beach today recalls the vast carnage of that day. While many of the other Allied beach landings went relatively well, Omaha proved deadly. Seasick, heavily laden men slogged through the surf. Many drowned. Many more were cut down by a wall of German fire. More than 2,000 Americans died on Omaha Beach that day. Nonetheless, by the time darkness fell, the invasion was a success. The story of the war and D-Day is movingly told at the Caen Memorial, just outside the city of Caen and not far from the beaches. Exhibits along a spiraling tunnel depict the history of Nazi Germany and the inevitable march to war. In the main theater, a dramatic split-screen film shows footage shot from both the American and German perspectives as the D-Day invasion unfolded. Interactive, high-tech, and engaging, the memorial involves the visitor in the heroism, sacrifice, and great sorrow of war. Of all the sights in Normandy, one stands alone as the most awe-inspiring and mysterious, the Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel. For centuries, pilgrims toiled to pay homage to St. Michael, the powerful archangel who weighs souls in heaven. Pilgrims crossed the bay, falling victim at times to the rushing tides and quicksand. The church bell tolled to warn of the advancing tide, which people claimed came as quickly as a galloping horse. Legend has it that the archangel appeared to the local bishop, Saint Aubert, in 708 and demanded that he build a shrine on this site. In the 11th century, the Benedictine Abbey was built here, and Mont Saint-Michel became a center of scholarship, known for its beautiful, illuminated manuscripts. The abbey is austere, but the views down to the bay are thrilling. In the 13th century, the dramatic Gothic wing of Mont Saint-Michel, La Merveille, was added on the north side of the mount. The Abbey Church is especially evocative during the daily noon Mass. The cloisters are located on the top floor of La Merveille with views to the sea. During the French Revolution, the government seized churches, and Mont Saint-Michel became a jail for political prisoners. Today, Mont Saint-Michel is the most popular tourist destination in France. If you want a certain amount of solitude and mystery at the Abbey, visit in the off-season, in late spring or early fall. From the mists of Mont Saint-Michel to the sweet orchards, to the stalwart castle fortresses, Normandy is at once bold and formidable, gentle and endearing. The clash of war still echoes on the beaches and in the fields, and the legacy of a great civilization stands watch over the towns and countryside. But in spite of its turbulent history, Normandy's peaceful way of life continues, inexorable and enduring. Like the Vikings, I want to stay in this land I've invaded. And like the Impressionists, I want to see Normandy in every changing mood. There's cider to be drunk, and seafood to be eaten, and a camembert tossing record to break. And so, from Normandy, au revoir.